Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much, or afternoon, I guess it'll be for you. Thank you for getting together for my presentation that I'm not even there for. I'm so sorry. The triplets are sick and I got to take them to the doctor. So tomorrow, if you have questions or if you would like to collaborate on something, or I am having this terrible, dreadful feeling that maybe there's going to be some technical difficulties, we'll get it all sorted out tomorrow. Okay, so this is the website that I am sending to Brad. It's a temporary website where I've added my folder on my Google Drive that's with my AUSD teacher account. And this is just a collection of mostly copies of stuff that I've either made or found that has to do with Jane Schaefer. All these are copies, so please feel free to edit if you want. I'd love it if we could all sort of collaborate on this folder and add things to it, or, if you have questions, you can put a comment on the side of something and we can address it that way, or you can, remind yourself to do something, whatever. My hope is that you're going to find something here that you'll be able to make use of somehow, but I also think that it's likely that you'll probably need to adjust for your own purposes, and I think that that's good and that's important for our students. So to begin with, my plan for today is I want to give you a brief introduction of some of the things that I've gathered or made in this folder. I'm going to actually go through my own presentation. That's kind of my own personal take on Jane Schaefer, that I show this presentation to students, but not the screencast. And then after that, I'm just going to give a brief sort of talk about some of the different assignments that are in here, and then I'm hoping that you can spend most of the time that we have today exploring on your own, or working on your own stuff, or, reading a little closely, because I have found that, as a new teacher myself, when teachers share folders or thumb drives or whatever with me, it's like, very appreciated, and I love having that stuff, but sometimes it's just so much that it's not helpful to me because I don't have the time to go through all, of the hundreds and hundreds of things that I find there. And it's the same with the internet. I mean, the internet has lots of wonderful resources, but there's just so much of it that it's hard. So before I give my own homemade intro to Jane Schaefer presentation, I'll actually ask the kids to watch something that I found online beforehand. It kind of gives them a little schema for what the process is and how it works, the colors and so on. And this is in this folder. It's called the Jane Schaefer Paragraph Writing 3 Pigs, because it takes the 3 little pigs as an example of a response to literature. So my students will have, got something beforehand before they see my own introduction. And for those new teachers who might be with us today, you are probably gonna want to spend some time on someone else's intro to Jane Schaefer, okay? But this is the way that I explain Jane Schaefer, all right? So, we English teachers, we see 2 common patterns when it comes to, let's say, problematic student writing, okay? Problem number 1 is something like this, all right? Romeo and Juliet's a play with many characters. The most interesting character is Mercutio. He's Romeo's best friend. Mercutio makes jokes. Romeo talks about his dreams. Mercutio interrupts. To quote the text, dreamers often lie. Later they crash a party. They leave Romeo behind. Okay, so what is the problem with this? Well, when I was in school, teachers would comment on writing like this, so, or so what, or who cares, or no duh. Okay, this is writing that it says lots of facts, but it's just kind of a repetition of someone else's facts, someone else's information. All right, so what? Okay, this is problem number 2, which is a little less common, but also something that I come across a lot myself, okay? I don't think Mercutio is a very good friend to Romeo. It's really messed up to just abandon someone. Mercutio knows what will happen if Romeo gets caught in the Capulet's home. On top of that, he makes jokes. Romeo's going through a hard time. I'm not saying he gets what he deserves in the end, but maybe Shakespeare gave Romeo friends who are all fake. So it makes it understandable why Romeo falls so deeply in love with Juliet. Okay, so this actually has something to say, which is great, but a teacher would be saying, like, you know, it's so great that you're making assertions, but where's your support? What evidence do you have? Also, did this person even really read the story? We don't know. This is just not a good example of academic writing, okay? So problem number 1 is kind of like too many facts. On the other hand, problem number 2 is all opinion, no fact, okay? So Jane Schaefer kind of came up with this approach that takes the 2 problems and kind of blends them together to form some competent writing, okay? Jane Schaefer said we need to balance facts and opinions, all right? So you got your concrete details, and those are written in red in the planning stages. You got your commentary in the planning stages. Those are written in green. And then your topic sentence would be your in blue. And if you have conclusions or a concluding sentence, that would be also in blue. Okay, so here's that example again. And I just kind of tried to write this myself as examples of concrete details. So these are facts that come from the external, all right? This is all sort of like quotes or summary of what happens in the text. There's nothing that the writer actually believes him or herself. On the other hand, you got commentary. So this is the writer's wheels turning and the writer making their own connections and saying, what does it mean? And if you combine those, okay, so like Mercutio's Romeo's best friend, that's a fact, but he's not a good friend to Romeo. That's kind of commentary, okay? Together, this sort of makes some competent writing. And I'm not going to read through this all now because you can sort of go back and do the reading on your own if you wish. The presentation is in the folder. Okay. Jane Schaefer, I actually was lucky enough to be trained by her one day a few years ago when I first started teaching in LA. And she really did have a strong effect on who I am as a teacher. I remember the first thing that she said was, kids need to write more. And my system gets a lot of criticism because people say that it produces formulaic writing. And she's like, that's fine. You don't have to use my system, but you have to have some kind of system. Because to just put a blank paper in front of a child and say, turn this into a thoughtfully, a cogently reasoned, thoughtfully argued, unique point that says something about who you are and how you're learning, that's pretty hard to do, to go from a blank paper to that, in usually the short amount of time that we have to spend on writing. So she developed this system. It was originally developed for AP. I think she was tired of AP kids, saying, why didn't I get an A+ on this essay? And she said, because it has no original thoughts. So she started having them highlight their papers and, separate out their own concrete details and commentary. And she found that that was a powerful way for students to see, like, oh, I don't support what I say with evidence from the text. Or on the other hand, students say, oh, I'm doing a great job of reporting back the facts, but I'm not making them add up to something that comes from me, okay? So I remember very clearly she did say that her system is a scaffold, and don't forget, the point of a scaffold is to remove it as soon as you can. So, again, the colors and the shaping sheets, it's not for everyone, but it was never her intention to make kids memorize a bunch of different colors and, you know, take a bunch of time and make the writing process even more arduous than it already is for some of our students. Okay, so again, there's a lot here, but Jane Schaefer's approach was really about the writing process, okay? It's just not enough to tell kids, you need to make a plan before you start writing, because I don't think I need to tell any of you, kids don't believe that. They don't want to do it. They, you know, they think that it's extra work to make a plan, and so they just want to start. And then they put all kinds of work into the first idea that comes out of their mind, which is never the best idea. And then when they get criticized, like this isn't the best piece of writing you could possibly do, it's very frustrating to throw away all of that work, all because they didn't want to spend the few minutes making a plan before they started. So a big piece of Jane Schaefer's approach is that, you know, somehow kids really need to see the value of separating out the parts of the process where, you know, first you make a little plan, then you turn that plan into writing, and then you turn that writing into better writing. Okay, so in the planning stage, Jane Schaefer used all kinds of graphic organizers, and I have several in my folder from which for you to choose. But, you know, she also emphasized, which I think is really cool, that your ideas don't come out in the correct order. So you might have something you know you want to say, right? Like Mercutio's a good friend. So you start with your topic, and then you got to look for concrete details that will support that. And then you turn those details into commentary. Okay. On the other hand, maybe you don't really know what you want to say, but you have this writing assignment. You got to get through it. So you start with the concrete details, and then you see what those add up to by adding commentary. Okay. So it's like you don't have to start with step 1, step 2, step 3. And that's something else that's nice about this is, you know, kids really do need to understand that not everyone's brain works the same way, and there's not one correct way to do any of this writing stuff. Okay, so at this point in the presentation, I kind of will model for students, and this is just one example of writing. We're starting the year with writing, you know, presentations and essays about their worldview. So this kind of, again, it's like part of a process. They came in with a belief, and now they need facts to support it and commentary to back that up. So I started with my concrete details, and then just over here, I was asking myself, well, why is that important, or what does it mean? And I turned that into commentary. Okay, now not all of this commentary is the most brilliant commentary that I could come up with. That's another important part of the writing process is now that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of commentary, I'm only going to need to end up with 1 or 2 so I can toss out the ones that, you know, don't connect or don't track well. Okay, after Jane Schaefer's planning, you start drafting. So, you know, these are notes. They should not be sentences. We should not make our students write complete sentences when they're planning. But after that, we turn it into some writing. So this is just sort of the basic formula for a 2-chunk paragraph, which is very standard. I find the shorter the chunks, the fewer the chunks, actually the harder the paragraph is to write. Okay. So I combined everything together and came up with this paragraph. And then there's weaving, which is also an important part of this process. So this is okay, but it's a little formulaic, and it would make a lot of college professors roll their eyes if they're reading it, right? So, oh my God,